The stories presented in this video are real, but we have changed the characters' names and altered images to protect their identities. The creator of this video is not an investigative officer. These narratives have been sourced from various internet platforms. Our intent is not to accuse or target anyone in particular. Thank you for understanding.
Today we explore the horrific case of Maggie Caldwell, a wealthy individual who amassed her wealth through the purchase of upscale real estate. You will be deeply shaken by this case. Our narrative begins with Maggie Caldwell, a beautiful 54-year-old woman who amassed a fortune in upscale real estate. Some of the most prestigious homes in the nation were in her portfolio, and her name was associated with success. However, Maggie's path was everything but typical. With a keen mind and a strong sense of resolve, she navigated the complex world of wealth and power, never hesitating to seize what she desired in life or business. Then, there was 26-year-old Ethan Riley, a charming but tough individual whose life had taken a surprising turn. Before destiny brought him into Maggie's world, Ethan, a former collegiate athlete who had been disabled by injury, sailed through a number of ordinary jobs, his ambitions of success fading away. Their unique and passionate relationship appeared to bridge a void in their lives. Ethan appealed to Ethan's extravagant lifestyle, while Maggie saw in him a sense of youth and vitality. Maggie's lavish lifestyle served as the setting for their covert affair for almost a year. However, something negative was simmering beneath it all. Time was running out before a bloody night occurred, as the excitement that had once propelled their romance devolved into a dangerous obsession. What began as an exhilarating escape quickly evolved into something far more perilous, igniting a chain of events beyond either party's control that would eventually have disastrous results. With a keen sense of opportunity and unwavering resolve, Maggie started her journey to become a real estate tycoon. She transformed rundown buildings into coveted mansions, enhancing her riches and prestige with each accomplishment. She had deeper, more secret desires beneath her polished exterior, though. Her marriage to Michael Caldwell, a CIA agent who was frequently deployed, was less of a love affair and more of a strategic alliance. Maggie was now free to investigate her own wants without the prying gaze of society. When Maggie was looking for excitement outside of the professional world, Ethan came into her life. Their lives soon became entwined in ways neither of them had anticipated as what started out as a casual fling deepened. Secrets and falsehoods began to surface as their affair went on, leading them to a disastrous conclusion that would permanently harm their lives and reputations. Maggie Caldwell's ascent to prominence was characterized by her unwavering drive, keen intellect, and remarkable aptitude for navigating the complex real estate industry. Maggie Caldwell's life was going to be consumed by chaos, and the storm outside was only the beginning. There were secrets hidden behind her perfect veneer that may ruin everything she had worked so hard to achieve. The forces attempting to bring her down were as fierce as the storm. She was the only child of an industrious construction worker and a committed schoolteacher, and she was born in a humble area of Chicago. Maggie demonstrated a natural ability to charm and persuade even as a young girl. These traits would later prove to be her greatest assets in the cutthroat world of luxury real estate. When she was awarded a scholarship to study architecture at a prominent university, her journey really got underway. Maggie immediately made an impression due to her unwavering commitment as well as her academic prowess. She soon caught the attention of a prominent professor with strong ties to the real estate sector. Maggie cultivated a strategic mindset and improved her creative abilities under his tutelage, laying the groundwork for her future business. After graduating, Maggie worked for a prestigious real estate company, where she quickly rose to prominence. As she closed transactions that others thought were unattainable, her coworkers looked on in wonder and even envy. By her 40s, Maggie had established Caldwell Estates, a real estate conglomerate that catered solely to the wealthiest people on the planet, and was known for its luxury and inventiveness. However, as Maggie's career flourished, her personal life's shadows deepened. Every business triumph concealed a more serious and perilous breakdown at home. Ethan's entrance will only exacerbate the fissures that were already visible in her idyllic life. Instead of being a romantic partnership, Her marriage to high-ranking CIA agent Michael Caldwell was a strategic collaboration. Maggie was left to her own devices, living in a world of luxury and desire, as Michael was often gone on secret missions. Theirs was a marriage in name only, a partnership of convenience where each followed their own interests individually. Ethan Riley stood out from the other males who came across Maggie's path. Ethan was more than just a passing fad at age 26. He developed into a crucial component of Maggie's well-planned existence. She made him the perfect companion by lavishing him with luxury and relocating him to the guest house on her expansive estate. With his tough appearance and effortless charm, Ethan appeared like the ideal addition to Maggie's world of high-end clothing, fine dining, and exclusive parties. However, Ethan had a more sinister and perverse history than Maggie could have ever envisioned. Ethan had wandered through life before he met her, leaving a trail of unfulfilled promises and dubious situations in his wake. He had a girlfriend in a small town, and there was one particularly disturbing episode involving her. She abruptly vanished without a trace, despite the fact that he had told everyone about her and painted a picture of the ideal relationship. The community was ablaze with gossip as the days stretched into weeks, but nobody knew what had happened to her until her body was discovered in an odd position next to Ethan's house. Rumors of his involvement followed him everywhere he went, but the authorities never had enough proof to prosecute him. Sarah's body was found partially submerged in the murky, shallow waters below Ethan's house on a stormy night. Draped in the white dress she had worn the last time anyone saw her, her lifeless body appeared almost out of place in the bleak, rain-soaked surroundings. It was unclear what caused the death. There were no obvious indications of struggle or proof of foul play, but the manner in which she was discovered was unquestionably unsettling. Some others thought Ethan knew more than he disclosed, despite the town's residents whispering about a terrible accident. The suspicion hung over Ethan like a shadow, but the local police ended the inquiry since they couldn't prove anything. The memory of that night followed him, a spectral reminder of the truths he kept hidden deep inside. But he quickly left the town. From the beginning, Ethan Riley introduced Maggie to the specters of a hidden past that would eventually engulf them both. However, control is a perilous delusion, and Maggie was on the verge of losing it. The more Maggie attempted to shape Ethan to her will, the more his troubled history hung over their relationship, threatening to destroy everything she had worked so hard to create. Their connected pasts were headed for disaster. For Maggie, having Ethan in her life was more than simply an exciting experience. It was a risky power and manipulation game. She became more and more embroiled in his web of secrets and falsehoods as she attempted to exert control over him, but Maggie was no stranger to peril. She had, after all, made her fortune by outwitting everyone who stood in her way. But this time, the repercussions were more lethal and the stakes were higher. Maggie and Ethan's love flourished in the background for almost a year. At social gatherings where Ethan's youthful charm and fine looks attracted adoring looks, Maggie took joy in flaunting him. She enjoyed the jealous looks from young ladies who could only hope to have a friend like Ethan. Ethan received the taste and financial stability of a life he had never experienced in exchange. However, the dynamic started to change as their bond grew. Ethan had never expected Maggie to be attracted to other young men. Even though he first agreed to their arrangement, he began to feel uneasy about Maggie's relationships with other men. Maggie's affair with Justin McAllister, a 28-year-old tennis instructor who frequently visited the same upscale club where Maggie spent her afternoons, marked a turning point in their relationship. Justin was shy, reserved, and totally oblivious to Maggie's secret life, everything that Ethan was not. He never suspected that she was a woman with a darker side. He only regarded her as a wealthy client who occasionally flirted with him. Justin was merely another victory for Maggie, a fleeting pleasure in her ravenous desire for younger men. However, it was a betrayal to Ethan. Despite the fact that their arrangement had always been transactional, Ethan began to feel possessive. The idea of Maggie with another man made him feel extremely uncomfortable because he had grown to love her. He started to wonder if he was merely another item in her collection, and started to wonder what their connection was all about. His fascination and jealousy increased as he gave it more thought. At first, Maggie, who was always a skilled manipulator, thought Ethan's possessiveness was admirable. Knowing that she could push him to the limit with a few words or a look gave her a sense of power and attention that she relished. But as Ethan started acting strangely, Maggie started to see that she had made a monster. Ethan began to follow Maggie, asking her whereabouts and checking her phone. Maggie, who was not used to being questioned, found herself losing control of the situation as his jealousy became overwhelming. Maggie lost control and experienced true fear for the first time. She was now the target of what had started out as a game, but had now become a lethal trap. The storm inside Maggie's house was even worse than the one outside. Ethan's jealousy erupted that night as the wind shrieked, beginning a fatal spiral that would end their lives together. Like many evenings, it had started with a sumptuous supper and excellent wine. However, Ethan's attitude altered as the evening went on. He grew more and more agitated. He was more pushy and pointed in his questioning regarding her previous relationships. Maggie, whose patience had run its course, answered with icy indifference, brushing off Ethan's worries as unfounded jealously. She was tired of Ethan's incessant need for assurance, and she had never meant for their relationship to get so convoluted. Their agreement was obvious to her. He offered her the companionship she so desperately needed, and she provided for him. Ethan, however, was no longer content with that. He kept wanting more of her time, more love, more attention. Ethan accused Maggie of betraying him as the dispute heated up. He addressed her in her private study, a soundproof space where she frequently withdrew to escape the outside world, and his voice trembled with emotion. Maggie mocked him for believing he could ever be more than a plaything in her life and laughed at his charges, her cold demeanor finally melting. The last straw was the insult. Ethan snatched up the shotgun Maggie kept for protection and pointed it at her in a blind rage. When Maggie understood how dangerous she was, her cold calm momentarily wavered. However, Ethan squeezed the trigger before she could respond. The bomb reverberated around the room, but nobody outside could hear it because of the soundproofing. The formidable and mysterious businesswoman Maggie Caldwell had passed away. Ethan was standing over Maggie's corpse. Slowly, the truth of what he had done began to set in. The immensity of what he had done made him panic, but he had learned how to hide his traces from years of dealing with the evil side of life. In order to give the impression that Maggie had committed suicide, he carefully prepared the room and cleaned the area, erasing any evidence of his presence. By placing the shotgun next to her body, he made it appear as though she had shot herself by wrapping her hands around it. In order to prevent fingerprints or DNA evidence from connecting him to the crime, he next thoroughly cleaned every surface he had come into contact with. Before sneaking out of the estate in the dark, he made one final check of the room to make sure everything was in working order. Ethan was well gone by the time the authorities showed there the following morning, reintegrating into society as if nothing had occurred. Inconsistencies surfaced as detectives looked into Maggie's death, which was initially determined to be a suicide. After returning from his most recent mission, Michael Caldwell was crushed to learn of his wife's passing. He never thought their marriage would end so tragically, even though it had been far from ideal. But as the investigation progressed, Michael started to have doubts that Maggie's death was as simple as it appeared. His questions grew as he discovered more about his wife's covert life. Although Michael had always recognized Maggie's complexity and dark side, he had never thought she was engaged in such risky relationships. Even though the case got more complicated, Michael grew more motivated to find the truth as the inquiry went on. The case swiftly gained widespread media attention, with headlines dominated by conjecture over Maggie's hidden life. As investigators learned more about her relationships with younger men, it appeared that one of them might have been motivated to murder her. However, in spite of their best efforts, the police failed to discover any solid proof that connected anyone to the crime. Ethan, who had meticulously removed any indication of his involvement, observed the investigation from a distance. He avoided suspicion by using the shadow navigating skills he had learned from his earlier experiences. He maintained a low profile by altering his appearance, avoiding interaction with anyone who would link him to Maggie, and staying out of sight by avoiding any locations where he might be recognized. The public's interest in the case declined as the months went by. In a world full with unsolved cases, Maggie Caldwell's death sank into obscurity as the media moved on to the next big story. Michael Caldwell was left with more questions than answers when the case was finally closed because the authorities, despite their best efforts, were unable to locate any credible leads. Haunted by his wife's passing and the unsolved mysteries surrounding her passing, Michael finally came to terms with the possibility that he might never find out. Those who knew Maggie Caldwell would always be puzzled by the case's official classification as unsolved. Ethan was unharmed and could carry on with his life as if nothing had occurred. He relocated to another city, changed his identity, and began anew. He had been hardened and taught the actual cost of his goals by the event. He used his athletic experience to draw in new customers as a fitness trainer at a posh gym. He avoided intimate connections and kept his background a secret, keeping to himself. He had become adept at negotiating the perilous seas of his own sinister tendencies, and he had come out on the other side more crafty and elusive than before. Even though the world changed, he could never forget Maggie Caldwell because she served as a warning about the perils of tinkering with power and desire. Ethan, however, had no remorse. The most crucial lesson he had ever learned was to never show your true self to someone until it was too late. A smile flashed on his lips as he strolled through the streets of his new existence.